Home about. Classes were built in secondary schools, and this regime chose to have our children continue learning in their primary schools, even though junior secondary school. So we have a great shortage of classrooms in these schools, yet the classes where they should be carrying out their studies are left in secondary schools, Honorable Speaker. This regime ought to have looked at this thing in depth before making that decision to continue having them in the existing primary schools. It creates an imbalance, Honorable Speaker. You have very young children in Standard 7 wearing trousers and blazers, amidst other students who are putting on shorts. Even those who are in Standard 8 are putting on shorts, yet their juniors in class 7 are putting on the trousers and blazers, Honorable Speaker. This kind of imbalance ought not to have taken shape. And that is why the drafters of the junior secondary school section so chose to have them go to high school, where everybody else is dressed just like them, Honorable Speaker. I noted with great dismay that even though there are 14 compulsory subjects and other elective subjects that come to about 8, so 22 in number, only one teacher is plugged into a junior secondary school. Even if you are a genius, for heaven's sake, you cannot teach 22 subjects, Honorable Speaker, and this is something that has to be properly looked into. And when this regime chose to have 35,000 more additional teachers to primary schools, I had thought that they were going to be sane enough, amid this insanity, to have these teachers going to junior secondary schools. So there is a great shortage in those schools, Honorable Speaker. Besides the fact that there are certain subjects that call for laboratories, and there are no laboratories in all these schools. So you have children undertaking theory lessons without practicals, Honorable Speaker. So this is total disarray of our education system, Honorable Speaker. Amidst all this disorganization, they are also expected to pay 11,000 shillings, dubbed lunch money. Now, it is good to have lunch in school, because lunch probably is the only meal that these children can have in a day, amidst the poverty that has permeated our systems. But you have children who cannot afford 11,000 shillings to pay, but they are forced to pay that kind of money, Honorable Speaker. So you ask yourself, what happened? Just the other year, they were running back home to eat and come back to school in the afternoon. Now, parents are being forced to check out 11,000 shillings every year. Now, our NGCDF system has not given us regulations to go down deep into Standard 6 or Standard 7. So, as I was walking around my constituency, I was being confronted by these facts. To have these children be put under the category of NGCDF under bursary. I was telling them, no, we cannot do that because our regulations do not allow us to do so. So it's a total mess, Honorable Speaker, and I wish at one point in time, this House will come to make a decision around junior secondary schools. If it is not addressed in good time, Honorable Speaker, I'm very afraid that we are losing a generation, academically speaking. And if we lose a generation, an entire generation, thousands and thousands of students, what will then happen to them few years to come? My kid in Standard 7 will be asking me, Dad, you saw this happening and you never raised any alarm. At least I will be vindicated by this debate, Honorable Speaker, that I tried to bring it to light so that our children can know that that kind of disorganization should not be allowed to pass, Honorable Speaker. Now, on this report, Honorable Speaker, the drafters of the CDF Act 2003 came to the realization of how other areas were alienated by the successive regimes. That where you have to vote a particular pattern in order to get benefits out of it. You remember, even 2 days ago, and I'm glad that my colleague here has said this House is not an appendage or a stooge of State House. Honorable Speaker, we listened to one William Samoei Ruto over the weekend, dictating terms to this House. And you know, when we were in school, for us who were privileged to undertake executive education, we were told about separation of powers, how Parliament is separate from the judiciary and is also separate from the executive, and that no House or no arm of government can dictate to the other on how it conducts its business. I was perplexed beyond recognition that William Samoei Ruto could stand up to dictate to this House how they will handle the finance bill, Honorable Speaker. What happened to the independence of these institutions? What happened to the matter of argumentation? Because you have to argue. A president, so he calls himself, cannot dictate to this House how we conduct our businesses. And if that was, you know, to threaten certain members of this House to vote a particular pattern, then I'm very afraid that they are just starting. You never know how much they would want to push in the next few years. And if we are not afraid, Honorable Speaker, don't be shocked to be confronted by a bill that will be extending the life of a president in this country. It has happened to our neighboring country. It can happen now. So what the executive is trying to do is to see how much they can push so that they can now transact those clandestine businesses in this republic, Honorable Speaker. Now, the drafters of our NGCDF, fully recognizing that there are issues that needed to be addressed in schools, with our security, with our sporting culture, and many others, came up with this NGCDF. And one thing that I really appreciate them for is how transparent issues of CDF are, Honorable Speaker. This is one money that if you have to reallocate, then you have to seek permission. Unlike devolution, where, you know, it is at the disposal of a governor and his cabinet to choose as and where money goes without seeking any approval from anybody, Honorable Speaker. Our money is directly plugged to projects. And how I wish that even those who were carrying out the devolution as an act of Parliament and infusing it within the Constitution, borrowed from this system that money must be plugged into a project. That is how issues of corruption are nipped at the bud, Honorable Speaker. And, you know, you move around this country, the only good news only comes from CDF. Whereas billions are usually expended to counties, there is nothing to write home about them, Honorable Speaker. Even when there is no water, there is no health care, there is no roads, no one is asking the governor. They are still coming to us as members of Parliament to answer to these questions, Honorable Speaker. So I wish that the drafters took that model emanating from the NGCDF in order to undertake all the transactions, Honorable Speaker. Now, this inordinate delay that has been spoken by my colleagues here is something that needs to be properly checked, Honorable Speaker. We just disbursed some few monies going towards bursaries. But then what happens to all the projects that we hitherto earmarked for upgrading of classrooms or building new classrooms and doing sporting events and many other things, Honorable Speaker? And the money that we got to some constituencies is not even enough to do bursaries, Honorable Speaker. And we are coming to the end of this financial year. And this House is keeping quiet. Yet, this is the same House that passes budgets for all other departments within government, Honorable Speaker. We haven't noted any inordinate delay with the executive arm of government. Just the other day, you saw the Chief Justice Parliament, we have to beg.
You have it.
Thank you. I thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. So when the judiciary gets its full monies, the executive gets what it needs inside its budget. And all those monies come from appropriation from this House, Honorable Speaker. And yet, when it comes to our matters, then we are told that, you know, Treasury has not released your exchequer. And then you'll be told that the Speaker and the clerk will be meeting with the Treasury Cabinet Secretary to talk about our monies, Honorable Speaker. We have to beg, literally, living on our knees, talking to the executive that has no due respect to the members of this House and what it ought to be doing, Honorable Speaker. These are matters that we must confront. These are matters that we have to be very much alive to. We are not going to allow the judiciary, buying and driving state-of-the-art vehicles and showcasing them in public functions, and then giving a swipe at the members of parliament without due regard to the participatory role that we play in the welfare of this country, Honorable Speaker. So I want to challenge us that this House has teeth that it has refused to put into use. Today, we tabled the budget, the appropriations, budget and appropriations bill. Today, we tabled the public finance bill. The executive expects that you will shepherd the entire process without any hitches. Yet, there is no CDF. How I wish that we can stand our ground the way we did it in Mombasa and say, no budget, no CDF, and no CDF, no budget. And we say, no public finance bill. Of course, I will oppose that finance bill with all my might. But let us come to the realization that this House has what it takes to do what is necessary so that we champion the interest of the people that we represent out there. With those many remarks, I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Jared Okello. The Honorable Dr. Eve Obara, the MP for Kabondo Kasipul.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I too stand to support the report. Mr. Speaker, I support the sentiments of my colleagues on the important role that CDF has played in our communities.